When you're planning a church, one of the first things people ask you is where. They want to know the physical location, and so a facility for worship is important. So how do you pick a facility for a church plant? No two church plants are exactly the same. People, communities, economics, and ministry purpose are only a few of the many variables church planners must work within. While God's purpose should be the centerpiece of every ministry initiative, many successful efforts have found that using a systematic checklist approach to identify and rate potential facilities have greatly contributed to achieving their ministry goals. But what does that systematic effort look like in practical terms? Well, the first one is location, location, location. Just as location is usually the most important variable in a secular real estate decision, so it is with a church plant. For most church plants, that usually means attaining the most visibility that you can afford, although some unique ministries may not share that same need. Generally speaking, new churches should be highly visible. Locations that are on main streets with drive-by traffic or easily accessible and visible from throughways to interstates contribute to the exposure that your church plant will have today and tomorrow. Explore all your location options. In today's changing real estate markets, you may have many different choices in where to locate your church plant, and many you may not have initially considered. Each will have advantages and disadvantages. So you got to evaluate each from the perspective of a unique ministry, your unique ministry and budget. But be sure to consider all the possible alternatives, including rental ownership, lease, and option to purchase. Possibilities include schools where you could rent, whether it's public, private, colleges, universities, daycare. Historically, there's been a bias regarding the use of public school facilities for church use. Today, however, many public school districts, short of funding, are aggressively searching out lease and rental relationships that fit building use schedules. Great locations, community awareness, and a clean facility will make this both a Sunday and an evening option as well. Other public service facilities may include YMCAs, public government buildings, libraries. There are many options. Most contain public meeting spaces, and when approached gently, the facilities management can be maybe enthusiastically, especially if the church plant has outreach activities that support that public service organization's purpose. Another possibility is a gymnasium or health club. A good option is if you can find a 6-day facility and you're only looking for a Sunday worship space. Of course, be aware of the gym odor and general cleanliness of the facility. One of my personal favorites is movie theaters. And I've had 2 different church plants in movie theaters. It's interesting because when I look at the movie ads during the previews, those are things that attract us. And I remember going to the movies with my wife a few years back, and we were surprised to see a few ads during the previews directed at leasing theaters for faith organization purposes. You have the comfortable seating, easy access, restrooms, and other comforts. It might be a perfect option for a new church plant, especially if your church plant enjoys popcorn. Some have even done nightclubs or dance clubs. I'll admit that at first that's a turnoff maybe to some, but I've seen a few church plants that have used nightclubs for their Sunday worship because they employed maybe a contemporary style worship with coffee, house congregational seating approach. They had a good match with the facility. And they may even found some new attendees just wandering into the early service. Other places could be a dance place, karate, yoga studios. Like childcare facilities, open, clean spaces like these studios are usually available if you can solve the adult seating requirements. You could also look at empty food and drug stores. These fit well if your church plant is able to manage a long-term lease or purchase. Many of these abandoned locations are owned by large corporations that have depreciated business value, so the owners will sometimes take a less than market lease or purchase valuation rather than having to build rather than having the building stand empty. Be sure to consider also some other factors as well. Is the facility located in a safe and well-lit area? Is the building capacity suitable for ministry with adults, children, and teens? Is there adequate parking? Will the electric capacity support your worship style? Is the atmosphere of the neighborhood conducive to the church plant? Is there a minimal conflict between church operations, traffic, and neighbors? Are there adequate restrooms? Have you considered all applicable zoning and signage codes? And then another factor is, what do? Do you lease, rent, or purchase? Most church plants I have observed over the years don't have the economic luxury of purchasing a facility. And there's also recognition by many today that brick and mortar purchases are not always the best methodology to support their ministry objectives. Here are some relative drawbacks and advantages of choosing a short or long-term facility commitment. Short-term is 1 year or less, and they usually allow for a greater choice of facility options and can bring good economic value. At the same time, short-term facilities are normally only available for specific hours and days of use, and the lack of permanence and continuous visibility can be a significant drawback to your ministry purpose. Keep in mind that setup and tear down and moving efforts for worship and other church activities can be a real burden on your volunteers. Long-term facilities usually send a message of permanence to the very community and demographic your plan is targeting. Longer leases allow for better strategic and space planning, with many shopping malls, warehouses, and movie theater relocations taking place today. Some amazing and cost-effective opportunities can be available to an innovative congregation. While I believe the church is not a descriptor of the building, but rather the people inside the building, I have observed a correlation between successful church plants and the use of a systematic approach to match a potential facility with the church plant's ministry. Many successful church plants have followed a form of the process that I just shared. So even though buildings are arbitrary and worship setting is arbitrary, at the same time, they're vitally important, and there are a lot of considerations that go into it.